Document Part 6. The shuttle drifted silently through space, its engines humming softly as it carried the survivors farther away from the wreckage of the alien station. The view outside was a stark contrast to the chaos they had just escaped tenless. Stars stretched across the blackness, their light cold and distant. Inside, however, the mood was anything but calm. Ryan sat slumped in his seat, his hands trembling as he stared at the floor. Exhaustion weighed heavily on him, both physical and mental. He could still feel the heat of the explosion on his skin. Hear the deafening roar as the station collapsed into itself. It had been close to close. If they had hesitated even a moment longer, they wouldn't have made it out alive. Megan sat beside him, clutching her camera tightly in her lap. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with shock. She hadn't spoken since they left the station, and Ryan wondered if she was replaying the events in her mind like he was. The hybrids, the spire, the crystallite, all felt surreal now, like a nightmare that refused to fade. In the cockpit, Laura focused intently on the controls, her expression unreadable. She had taken charge during the escape, her quick thinking and steady hand guiding them to safety. But now, with the immediate danger behind them, the weight of responsibility seemed to settle over her shoulders. She glanced back at the others briefly, her gaze lingering on Ryan, before returning to the instruments before her. Jake leaned against the wall near the cockpit, his weapon resting at his side. His usual confident demeanor was gone, replaced by a quiet tension. He kept glancing out the viewport, as if expecting something to emerge from the darkness and chase them down. The thought crossed Ryan's mind too, though he tried to push it away. They were safe now, or at least safer than they had been. "We should contact the Aurora at dawn," Megan said suddenly, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant, as if she wasn't sure how the others would react. Laura nodded without looking back. "I'll send a signal. Let them know we're okay." Ryan frowned, leaning forward slightly. "Do you think they'll come for us?" "They'd better," Jake muttered, his tone sharp. "If not, we're stuck out here." "No one's coming after us," Ryan said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. "Not after what happened. We barely survived that station. Who knows what else is out there?" His words hung in the air, heavy and unsettling. For a moment, no one spoke. The truth was hard to ignore. They had ventured into the unknown and barely made it back. The station had been a graveyard, a monument to a civilization that had destroyed itself. And yet, as terrifying as it had been, Ryan couldn't help but feel a pang of regret. They had left so much behind: answers, discoveries, secrets that could have changed everything. "You're quiet," Megan said, nudging Ryan gently. Her voice was softer now, tinged with concern. "I'm just thinking," Ryan replied, forcing a weak smile, "about what we saw, what we did." "It's over," Megan said firmly, though her voice wavered slightly. "We stopped the hybrids. We got out. That's all that matters." "Is it?" Ryan asked, turning to look at her. "What if there are more stations like that? More hybrids? What if we didn't destroy them all?" Megan opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. She looked away, her grip tightening on the camera in her lap. Ryan knew she was thinking the same thing he was, the possibility that they hadn't truly ended the threat. The station might be gone, but the technology that created it was still out there, waiting to be found. Laura's voice interrupted their thoughts. "Signal sent," she announced, leaning back in her seat. "It'll take some time for the Aurora Dawn to reach us, assuming they can navigate this sector safely. Until then, we need to focus on staying alive. And figuring out what to do next," Jake added, crossing his arms over his chest. "Because if another one of those things shows up, we're dead." Ryan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Maybe we should go back." The suggestion was met with stunned silence. Megan stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Go? Back? Are you serious?" "Think about it," Ryan said, his voice rising slightly. "That station held answers we need. If we don't understand what happened there, how can we stop it from happening again?" "You want to risk our lives again?" Megan demanded, her voice trembling. "After everything we just went through?" "It's not just about us," Ryan insisted. "It's about everyone back home. What if someone else finds that station? Or worse, build something like it. We can't let that happen. Laura turned to face him, her expression unreadable. You're talking about going back into that death trap. You really think we'd survive a second time?
I don't.
No, Ryan admitted, his voice quieter now. But I do know we can't run away. Not from this. For a long moment, no one spoke. The weight of Ryan's words settled over the group, each of them grappling with the implications. Had it survived the station, but at what cost? And could they really justify risking their lives again? Finally, Laura broke the silence. If we go back end, I'm not saying we need a plan, something better than running in blind and hoping for the best. Ryan nodded, relief washing over him. At least she hadn't dismissed the idea outright. Agreed. We'll need weapons, tools, supplies, anything we can use to defend ourselves. It's in a way to shut it down permanently, Megan added, her voice firmer now. If we go back, we finish it for good. Jake snorted, shaking his head. Easier said than done. Nothing about this mission has been easy, Laura reminded him, her tone sharp. But if we don't deal with this now, it'll come back to haunt us later. Ryan felt a flicker of hope. Maybe they understood. Maybe they realized they couldn't walk away not completely. The station might have been destroyed, but its legacy remained. If they didn't confront it, someone else would. As the shuttle continued its journey through space, the group began to discuss their options. Laura outlined possible strategies, while Jake suggested modifications to their weapons and equipment. Megan proposed analyzing the data they had collected, hoping to uncover clues about the station's purpose and weaknesses. Ryan listened intently, his mind racing with possibilities. For the first time since leaving the station, he felt a sense of purpose. They had survived, yes, but survival wasn't enough. The station had shown them the dangers of unchecked ambition, the consequences of playing God. If humanity was to avoid the same fate, they needed to learn from the mistakes of the past, and Ryan was determined to make sure they did. Asterisk. End document, Part 6. Asterisk. Document, Part 5. The group moved quickly, their footsteps echoing through the narrow corridors as they retraced their path toward the shuttle dock. The station groaned around them, its system still unstable from whatever Ryan and Megan had. Triggered in the spire chamber, sparks rained down from exposed wires, and sections of the walls buckled under the strain of the station's awakening. Every sound, every flicker of light felt like a countdown to disaster. Ryan led the way, clutching the crystal tightly in his pocket. He couldn't shake the feeling that it was the key to everything, the hybrids, the spire, the station itself. But he also knew it was dangerous. Whatever the crystal was, it wasn't meant for human hands. Still, he couldn't bring himself to leave it behind. It was too important. Behind him, Megan followed closely, her camera slung over her shoulder, and her scanner gripped firmly in one hand. She kept glancing back nervously, half expecting the hybrids to burst through the walls at any moment. Laura and Jake brought up the rear, their weapons ready, scanning every shadow for signs of movement. We're not going to make it. Megan muttered under her breath, her voice trembling. This place is falling apart. We'll make it, Ryan said sharply, though he wasn't sure if he believed his own words. Just keep moving. Laura stepped forward, her expression grim. Jake, how far are we from the shuttle? Not far, Jake replied, checking the map on his wrist. Device. But we've got company coming. I can hear them. Sure enough, the distant clanging of metal against metal grew louder, accompanied by the guttural screeches of the hybrids. They were close to close. Ryan's stomach tightened as he realized they wouldn't reach the shuttle before the creatures. Caught up to them, we need to find somewhere to hold them off, Laura said, her voice calm but urgent. Somewhere defensible? There. Megan pointed to a heavy door ahead of them. It looked sturdy, reinforced with thick metal plating. Ryan rushed forward and yanked it open, revealing a small storage room filled with crates and equipment. Inside, Laura ushered everyone through the doorway. Jake stayed behind just long enough to seal the door shut, then joined the others inside. The room was cramped, barely big enough for all four of them, but it would have to do. Ryan leaned against the wall, trying to catch his breath. His heart pounded in his chest and sweat dripped down his forehead. He glanced at Megan, who was pale and shaking. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. She nodded, though her eyes betrayed her fear. "I'm fine, just scared. We all are," Laura said firmly, her gaze steady. "But we can't afford to panic. We need to think." Jake crouched near the door, pressing his ear against the cold metal. "They're here," he said after a moment. "And there's a lot of them." Ryan clenched his fists, frustration bubbling inside him. They had come so far, uncovered so much, only to be cornered like rats. Was this how it ended? Trapped in? An alien tomb, torn apart by the remnants of a failed civilization. "Not yet. Listen," Ryan said suddenly, drawing everyone's attention. "We can't let them win. It's the station, it's powerful. Maybe the most advanced thing we've ever seen. If we can figure out how to use it, we might stand a chance." "How?" Laura demanded, her voice sharp. "We don't even know what half of this stuff does, but we do know something," Ryan insisted. "If the Spire controls everything, the hybrids, the conduits, the energy, if we can overload it, maybe we can disable the entire station." Megan frowned, her brow furrowed in thought. "Overload it? That could kill us too." "It's a risk," Ryan admitted. "But staying here isn't an option. Either we fight back or we die." Laura hesitated, weighing the options. Finally, she nodded. "All right, what's the plan?" Ryan pulled the crystal out of his pocket, holding it up for everyone to see. Its surface shimmered faintly, pulsing in time with the station's vibrations. "This thing, it's connected to the Spire. If we take it back there and activate the core, we might be able to overload the system. But we'll need to get past the hybrids first." Jake stood, reloading his weapon with practiced ease. "Then we'd better move fast. Those things aren't going to wait forever." The group prepared themselves as best they could. Laura and Jake checked their ammunition, while Megan rummaged through the crates, searching for anything useful. Ryan tucked the crystal back into his pocket and took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. "Ready?" Laura asked, her hand resting on the door's release lever. "As ready as we'll ever be," Ryan replied. With a swift motion, Laura yanked the lever and the door slid open, and the hybrids were waiting for them, their red eyes glowing ominously. In the dim light were at least a dozen of them, their twisted forms blocking the corridor. For a brief moment, no one moved. Then Jake fired the first shot. The blast struck one of the hybrids square in the chest, sending it stumbling backward. The others screeched in response, lunging forward with terrifying speed. Laura joined Jake, her weapon firing in steady bursts. As they tried to hold the line, Ryan and Megan darted past them, heading straight for the Spire chamber. "This way," Ryan shouted, leading Megan down the corridor. Behind them, the sounds of gunfire and metallic shrieks echoed loudly, urging them to move faster. As they ran, Megan noticed something strange about the walls. The glowing symbols that had been etched into the metal earlier now pulsed erratically, their light flickering like dying stars. "Ryan, look," she exclaimed, pointing to the nearest symbol. Ryan glanced at it, his eyes narrowing. "It's destabilizing. The station's systems are breaking down. That's good, right?" Megan asked hopefully. "If it falls apart, maybe the hybrids will too," maybe Ryan replied, though his tone suggested otherwise. "But if we're still inside when it happens," he didn't finish the sentence, but Megan understood. They needed to act quickly. When they finally reached the Spire chamber, the scene was chaos. The conduits along the walls sparked violently, and the floor vibrated beneath their feet. The Spire itself glowed an angry red, its surface rippling like liquid fire. Ryan approached cautiously, pulling the crystal from his pocket once more. "What are you doing?" Megan asked, watching him intently. "I'm going to insert it," Ryan explained, gesturing to a slot near the base of the Spire. "If I can reactivate the core, we might be able to overload it, and if you're wrong..." Megan pressed, her voice tense. "Then we're dead anyway," Ryan said bluntly. "Trust me, Megan, it's the only shot we've got." Megan hesitated, then nodded. "Do it." Ryan carefully placed the crystal into the slot. The moment it clicked into place, the Spire roared to life. Its glow intensified, bathing the room in blinding light. The conduits along the walls surged with energy, their hum growing louder and more erratic. Ryan stumbled back, shielding his eyes as the air crackled with electricity. "It's working," Megan shouted, her voice barely audible over the noise. "But it's unstable." Ryan nodded, grabbing her arm. "We need to get out of here, now." They sprinted toward the exit, dodging sparks and collapsing debris as they went. Behind them, the spire began to collapse, its surface cracking and crumbling under the strain of the overload. The ground shook violently, throwing them off balance. When they reached the corridor, they found Laura and Jake battling the last of the hybrids. The creatures were slower now, their movements sluggish as the station's power dwindled. Jake fired a final shot, taking down the last hybrid before turning to Ryan and Megan. "It's done," Ryan panted, leaning against the wall for support. "The spire's overloaded. We need to get to the shuttle before the whole station blows." Without hesitation, the group turned and ran, their footsteps pounding against the trembling floor. Alarms blared throughout the station, warning of imminent failure. Panels exploded overhead, showering them with sparks and shards of metal. The air grew hotter, thick with smoke, and the acrid smell of burning circuits. Finally, they reached the shuttle bay. The small craft sat waiting, its engines humming softly. Laura and Jake climbed aboard first, securing their positions at the controls. Ryan helped Megan inside, then collapsed onto a seat, his body trembling with exhaustion. "Go," Ryan shouted as the hatch sealed shut. Laura didn't need to be told twice. She activated the thrusters, and the shuttle lifted off, shooting away from the station just as the spire erupted in a massive explosion. A shockwave rippled outward, tearing the station apart piece by piece. The crew watched in silence as the structure disintegrated, consumed by flames and debris. For a long moment, no one spoke. They simply stared at the wreckage, their minds struggling to process what had just happened. They had survived, but at what cost? Ryan finally broke the silence, his voice soft but resolute. "We did it. We made it out." Megan nodded, though. Her expression was somber, but we left so much behind. So many questions unanswered. Ryan sighed, leaning back in his seat. "Some answers aren't worth the price. Let's just hope we never have to face something like that again." As the shuttle drifted further away from the remains of the station, the group allowed themselves a moment of relief. They had escaped death, but the memory of the alien fortress and the horrors within would haunt them forever. Asterisk, asterisk, and document. Part 5, asterisk, asterisk. Document. Part 4. The group stood before the massive viewport, their eyes fixed on the towering spire at the heart of the station. Shimmering surface pulsed faintly, casting an eerie glow across the surrounding chambers. Ryan couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and unease as he stared at it. This wasn't just a machine, it was alive, or at least it felt that way. The energy radiating from the spire seemed to hum in the air, vibrating through the floor beneath their feet. Laura broke the silence first, her voice firm but tinged with urgency. "We need to figure out what this thing does. If we can control it, we might be able to shut down the hybrids or at least keep them from attacking us again." Jake tightened his grip on his weapon, scanning the room cautiously. "And if we can't, what happens then?" "Then we're dead," Ryan said bluntly, earning a sharp look from Megan. He shrugged. "It's the truth. This place is dangerous and we're running out of time." Megan stepped closer to the viewport, her camera raised as she snapped photos of the spire. "Look at those conduits," she said, pointing to the glowing lines snaking out from the base of the structure. "They're connected to everything, the walls, the floors, even the hybrids. Whatever this thing is, it's powering the entire station." Ryan nodded, his mind racing. "If we can cut off its power, maybe we can disable the hybrids permanently. But how do we do that without blowing ourselves up?" Laura crossed her arms, her expression thoughtful. "We'll need to split up again. Jake, you're with me. We'll check the perimeter for any more hybrids. Ryan, Megan, you to stay here and study the spire. Try to figure out how it works. But don't touch anything unless you're absolutely..." "Sure." Ryan opened his mouth to protest, but Laura cut him off with a sharp glance. "Mean it, Ryan. We can't afford another mistake. He clenched his jaw but nodded reluctantly. She was right, they couldn't risk triggering another disaster. As Laura and Jake moved off to patrol the area, Ryan turned his attention back to the spire. Loomed over them like a silent guardian, his presence both mesmerizing and intimidating. Megan pulled out her scanner, aiming it at the spire. Numbers and graphs flickered across the screen, but nothing made sense. "This isn't like anything I've ever seen," she muttered, frustration creeping into her voice. "It's not just energy, it's something else." Mean?" Ryan asked, leaning over her shoulder to get a better look. "I don't know," Megan admitted, shaking her head. "It's like the spire is alive, but not in a biological way. It's almost digital, like it's made of pure information." Ryan frowned, trying to wrap his head around the concept. Information is energy. It sounded impossible, but then, again, so did everything else about this place. He glanced at the crystal tucked safely in his pocket. Maybe it held some answers. "Let me try something," he said, pulling the crystal out and holding it up to the light. The moment he touched it, the spire reacted. Its surface rippled, sending waves of color cascading down its length. The conduits embedded in the walls began to glow brighter, pulsing in sync with the crystal. Megan gasped, stepping back instinctively. "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything," Ryan exclaimed, though his voice betrayed a hint of excitement. "It's responding to the crystal." The spire's glow intensified, bathing the room in a warm golden light. Strange symbols appeared on its surface, swirling and shifting like liquid metal. Ryan approached cautiously, his heart pounding. The symbols looked similar to the ones they had seen earlier, but these were clearer, more defined. "It's communicating," Megan whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "But with who, us?" Ryan hesitated, then extended his hand toward the spire. As soon as his fingers brushed against its surface, a surge of energy coursed through him, jolting him backward. He stumbled, nearly dropping the crystal, but Megan caught him before he fell. "Are you okay?" she asked, concern etched on her face. Ryan nodded, though his mind was reeling. Images flashed through his thoughts, visions of alien cities, vast networks of machines and strange beings working together in harmony. It was overwhelming, like trying to process a lifetime of memories in seconds. "What happened?" Megan pressed, gripping his arm tightly. "I saw something," Ryan stammered, struggling to find the words. "It's like the spire showed me its history." This station wasn't just a place, it was a hub, a center for their civilization. Megan's eyes widened. "Their civilization? You mean the aliens who built this place?" "Yes," Ryan replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "But something went wrong. They tried to merge themselves with their machines to become something greater, and it destroyed them." The realization hit them both like a punch to the gut. The hybrids weren't just experiments gone wrong. They were the remnants of the original builders, twisted and corrupted by their own ambition. The station itself was a monument to their failure, warning to anyone who dared follow in their footsteps. "We need to tell Laura and Jake," Megan said urgently, glancing toward the door. "They need to know what we've found." Ryan nodded, slipping the crystal back into his pocket.
"What?"
"But we need to be careful. If the spire reacts to the crystal, it could trigger something else. We don't know what kind of safeguards are still active." Before they could move, the ground beneath them trembled violently, throwing them off balance. A loud rumbling echoed through the chamber, followed by the sound of metal grinding against metal. The spire's glow shifted from gold to a deep, menacing red, and the conduits in the walls began to spark. "What's happening?" Megan shouted, clutching Ryan's arm as the shaking grew worse. "I think we activated something," Ryan replied, his voice tight with panic. "Something big." The viewport cracked under the strain, spiderweb fractures spreading across its surface. Beyond the glass, the chambers below lit up with activity. Dormant machinery roared to life, and the conduits glowed brighter than ever. In the distance, they could see movement, dozens of hybrids emerging from the shadows, their red eyes glowing with renewed intensity. "Oh no," Megan whispered, her face pale with fear. Ryan cursed under his breath, grabbing Megan's hand and pulling her toward the exit. They needed to find Laura and Jake fast. If the hybrids were mobilizing, It wouldn't take long for them to reach the spire. And when they did, there would be no stopping them. As they sprinted down the corridor, the station seemed to come alive around them. Panels slid open, revealing hidden compartments filled with tools and weapons. Lights flickered on and off, casting the halls in alternating shades of darkness and brilliance. The air grew hotter, thick with the smell of burning metal and ozone. "This place is falling apart," Megan shouted, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "We just need to make it to Laura and Jake," Ryan yelled back, though he wasn't entirely sure where they were. All he knew was that they had to keep moving. They rounded a corner and skidded to a halt. Ahead of them, Laura and Jake stood facing a group of hybrids, their weapons drawn and ready. The creatures hissed and screeched, their mechanical limbs twitching as they prepared to attack. "Over here," Brian called out, waving his arms too. "Get their attention." Laura spun around, relief washing over her face when she saw them. "What's going on? The spirates waking up?" Ryan explained quickly. "We triggered something, and now the hybrids are coming for us." Jake cursed loudly, firing a shot at one of the hybrids as it lunged forward. The creature staggered, but didn't fall, its body absorbing the impact like it was nothing. "These things are tougher than they look. Need to get to the core," Megan shouted, pointing back the way they had come. "If we can shut it down, maybe we can stop them." Laura hesitated, her eyes darting between the advancing hybrids and the direction Megan had indicated. Finally, she nodded. "All right. Move." The group retreated down the corridor, the hybrids hot on their heels. Their footsteps echoed loudly as they ran, the station's systems continuing to malfunction around them. Sparks rained down from the ceiling, and sections of the floor collapsed without warning, forcing them to change course multiple times. When they finally reached the chamber housing the spire, they found it in a state of complete disarray. Conduits were sparking uncontrollably, and the symbols on the spire's surface were flashing erratically. The air crackled with energy, making it hard to breathe. "This is bad," Megan muttered, her voice trembling. "Really bad." Ryan ignored her, focusing instead on the console near the base of the spire. If they could access its controls, they might be able to shut it down, or at least slow it down enough to escape. "Help me with this," he shouted, gesturing for Megan to join him. Together they worked frantically, pressing buttons and pulling levers in a desperate attempt to override the system. Behind them, Laura and Jake fought off the hybrids, their weapons firing nonstop. Despite their efforts, the creatures kept coming, their numbers growing with each passing second. "We're not going to last much longer," Jay yelled, reloading his weapon with shaking hands. "Just hold them off," Ryan replied, his voice strained. "We're almost there." Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the spire let out a deafening roar. Its glow dimmed slightly, and the conduit stopped sparking. For a moment, everything went quiet. "Did it work?" Megan asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan shook his head. "I don't think so." Wait. Document. Part 3. The narrow passageway stretched ahead of them, its walls smooth and cold to the touch. Ryan led the way, his flashlight beam bouncing off the metallic surface as he moved cautiously forward. The air felt heavier here, almost suffocating, and every step echoed loudly in the confined space. Megan followed closely behind, her breath shallow and uneven. Neither of them spoke. The weight of what they had just encountered pressed down on them like a physical force. Ryan's mind raced as he tried to piece together what was happening. Those hybrids, they weren't just machines or animals. They were something in between, a twisted fusion of organic material and alien technology. He couldn't shake the thought that these creatures might have once been part of the station's original inhabitants, transformed into something monstrous by their own experiments. If that was true, then the station wasn't just abandoned, it was a tomb. "Do you think Laura and Jake are okay?" Megan whispered suddenly, breaking the silence. Ryan hesitated before answering. "I don't know, but we can't assume the worst. Need to find them." Megan nodded, though her face betrayed her fear. She clutched her camera tightly, as if it somehow made her feel safer. Ryan wished he could offer her more reassurance, but the truth was, he didn't know what lay ahead. For all they knew, the entire station could be crawling with those things. The passageway eventually opened into a larger chamber, its ceiling high above them and lined with glowing panels that cast an eerie blue light. The room was filled with strange machinery, some of it intact, some of it broken beyond recognition. In the center stood a massive structure resembling a control console, its surface covered in the same glowing symbols they had seen earlier. Unlike the pedestal in the previous room, this one seemed more functional, with levers, buttons, and screens arranged in a chaotic yet purposeful design. "This looks important," Ryan said, stepping closer to the console. His curiosity got the better of him again, despite the danger they were in. Maybe this is how we shut down whatever woke up those hybrids." Megan frowned, glancing nervously around the room. "Or maybe it's how we wake up even more of them. We should be careful," Ryan agreed. But caution wasn't going to get them out of this mess. He scanned the console carefully, looking for anything that resembled a power switch or shutdown mechanism. Some of the symbols pulsed faintly as if responding to his presence. Others remained static, their glow dim and lifeless. "See if you can find a pattern," Ryan suggested, pointing to the glowing symbols. "Maybe there's a sequence we need to follow." Megan stepped forward, her scientific instincts kicking. She studied the symbols intently, snapping photos as she went. "These look like instructions," she said after a moment. "But I can't read them. It's like math, but not our kind of math." Ryan sighed, running a hand through his hair. Of course it wouldn't be easy. Nothing about this place was straightforward. Still, he refused to give up, like if they could figure out how to operate the console, it might stand a chance of regaining control of the station, or at least finding a way to escape. As Megan continued analyzing the symbols, Ryan noticed something unusual about the floor beneath the console. There were faint grooves etched into the metal, forming a circular pattern around the base of the structure. Kneeling down, he traced the grooves with his fingers, feeling a slight vibration emanating from within. "What is it?" Megan asked. Noticing his focused expression, "I'm not sure," Ryan admitted. "But I think this thing might be connected to the station's core. Maybe it's some kind of access point." Before Megan could respond, a loud grinding noise echoed through the chamber. Both of them froze, their eyes darting toward the source of the sound. A section of the wall slid open, revealing another corridor leading deeper into the station. From the shadows emerged two more hybrids, their red eyes glowing ominously in the dim light. "Not again," Megan muttered under her breath, backing away slowly. Ryan quickly scrambled to his feet, positioning himself between Megan and the approaching creatures. This time, however, they weren't alone. Behind them, another group of hybrids appeared from a different entrance, effectively cutting off their escape route. "We're surrounded," Ryan said grimly, gripping his utility knife tightly. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was all he had. Megan looked around frantically, searching for any possible way out. Her gaze landed on the console. "What if we activate it? Maybe it'll distract them or overload the system." "Too risky," Ryan replied, shaking his head. "We don't know what it does." "Well, do you have a better idea?" Megan shot back, her voice rising in panic. Ryan hesitated, weighing their options. They were trapped, outnumbered, and outmatched. Activating the console might kill them more, save them. Either way, doing nothing would only lead to one outcome. "Fine," he said finally. With no other choice, Ryan approached the console and began pressing random buttons, hoping to trigger some kind of response. At first, nothing happened. Then, a low hum filled the room, growing louder with each passing second. The glowing symbols on the console flared brightly. The circular grooves on the floor began to emit a pulsating light. The hybrids paused, tilting their heads as if confused by the sudden activity. One of them let out a sharp screech, causing the others to grow restless. Whatever the console was doing, it clearly affected them. "Keep going," Megan urged, watching the hybrids warily. Ryan continued pressing buttons, his hands moving faster. Now, suddenly, the floor beneath the console split open, revealing a hidden compartment containing a small crystalline object similar to the sphere they had seen earlier. Without thinking, Ryan reached for it, his fingers closing around its cool surface. The moment he touched it, the entire chamber lit up, bathing them in a blinding white light. The hybrids let out ear-piercing screams, their mechanical limbs twitching uncontrollably. Sparks flew from their bodies as they collapsed to the ground, their red eyes flickering and fading. "What did you do?" Megan gasped, shielding her eyes from the intense brightness. "I don't know," Ryan shouted over the noise. "What?" "I think we stopped them." The light began to fade, leaving the room eerily quiet. The hybrids lay motionless, their forms reduced to piles of smoldering metal and flesh. Ryan stared at the crystal in his hand, his heart pounding. Whatever it was, it held immense power and danger. "We need to get out of here," Megan said urgently, grabbing Ryan's arm. "Hello." Ryan nodded, slipping the crystal into his pocket. He didn't fully understand what had just happened, but he knew one thing for certain. They couldn't stay in this room. The hybrids might have been disabled. The station itself still posed a threat. They retraced their steps back to the passageway, moving as quickly and quietly as possible. Along the way, Ryan kept glancing at the pocket where he had stashed the crystal. He couldn't shake the feeling that it was important, not just to the station, but to whatever civilization had built it. If they could figure out its purpose, they might uncover the key to surviving this nightmare. Eventually, they reached a junction where several corridors branched off in different directions. Ryan hesitated, unsure which path to take. They needed to find Laura and Jake, but without a map or any clear landmarks, it was impossible to know where to go. "Which way?" Megan asked, her voice tinged with desperation. Ryan took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. "We'll try the middle corridor," he decided. "It looks like it leads upward. Maybe it connects to the main level." Megan nodded, though her expression remained uncertain. Together, they started down the corridor, their footsteps echoing softly against the walls. The further they went, the more the station seemed to change. The walls became rougher, scarred by age and decay. Strange markings appeared, scratched into the metal as if someone or something had been trying to leave a message. "Do you see that?" Megan whispered, pointing to one of the markings. It depicted a humanoid figure surrounded by jagged lines, resembling lightning bolts. "It looks like a warning," Ryan said, frowning. "Like they were trying to tell others to stay away." Megan shivered. "Stay away from what?" Ryan didn't answer, didn't want to think about it. Instead, he focused on putting one foot in front of the other, determined to keep moving forward. They couldn't afford to stop, not now, not when they were so close to finding answers. After what felt like hours, they finally reached the end of the corridor. A heavy door blocked their path, its surface marked with the same glowing symbols they had seen throughout the station. Ryan placed his hand on the door, half expecting it to open automatically. When nothing happened, he pressed his ear against the cold metal, listening for any signs of movement on the other side. "Can you hear anything?" Megan asked anxiously. "No," Ryan replied.
What?
"But that doesn't mean it's safe." He hesitated for a moment, then pushed against the door with all his strength. It creaked open slowly, revealing a wide-open space bathed in soft artificial light. To their relief, they spotted Laura and Jake standing nearby, their faces pale. "With exhaustion, you're alive," Laura exclaimed, rushing toward them. "We heard noises and came looking for you. What happened?" Ryan exchanged a glance with Megan before answering. "We ran into trouble. Those hybrids attacked us, but we managed to disable them for now." Laura's eyes widened. "Hybrids? You mean those things are real?" Jake stepped forward, his weapon raised. Document. Part 2. The team stood in the dimly lit control room, their flashlights casting shaky beams across the alien machinery. The air was thick with tension, each of them aware that they were standing in a place no human had ever been before. Ryan's fingers twitched as he fought the urge to touch the crystalline sphere again. Megan's warning still echoed in his mind, but curiosity gnawed at him like an insistent itch. Laura broke the silence, her voice calm but firm. "We need to split up. There's too much ground to cover if we stay together. Jake, you're with me. We'll head down the main corridor and see if we can find any signs of what happened here. Ryan began you to stay here and document everything." Take pictures, record data, whatever you can. But don't touch anything unless absolutely necessary. Ryan nodded, though he felt a pang of frustration. Wanted to explore, to uncover the mysteries of this place firsthand. But he also knew Laura was right. Splitting up would allow them to gather more information faster, and someone needed to stay behind to study the strange devices in the control room. Still, the thought of being left alone, well, not entirely alone with Megan, made him uneasy. She was brilliant, no doubt about it. She had a way of asking questions that made him feel like he was being tested, as Laura and Jake disappeared into the shadows of the corridor. Ryan turned his attention back to the pedestal. The crystalline sphere continued to pulse faintly, its rhythm steady and almost hypnotic. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small handheld scanner, one of the tools designed specifically for analyzing unknown materials. Megan moved to the opposite side of the room, snapping photos of the glowing symbols on the walls with her camera. "This place feels wrong," Megan said suddenly, breaking the quiet. Her voice was soft, but there was a sharp edge to it, like she was trying to keep her emotions in check. "What do you mean?" Ryan asked, glancing over his shoulder. "I don't know," she admitted, lowering the camera for a moment. "It's just, everything about this station feels unnatural, like it shouldn't exist." Ryan frowned. He hadn't thought about it that way, but now that she mentioned it, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The architecture was too perfect, the symbols too intricate. It wasn't just advanced, it was otherworldly. And yet, despite its alien nature, there was something eerily familiar about it, as if it had been waiting for them all along. "Maybe it's just because it's so old," Ryan suggested, though even he didn't sound convinced. "Things decay. Over time, maybe that's why it feels unsettling." Megan shook her head. "No, it's more than that. Look at these symbols, they're glowing. That means there's still power running through this place. How is that possible after all these years?" Ryan didn't have an answer. Instead, he focused on the scanner, watching as it processed data from the crystalline sphere. Numbers and graphs flickered across the screen, but nothing made sense. Whatever material the sphere was made of, it didn't match anything in the database. It was completely alien. "Do you think this thing controls the station?" Megan asked, stepping closer to the pedestal. "It's possible," Ryan replied, adjusting the settings on the scanner. "If we could figure out how it works, we might be able to access the station's systems. Maybe even turn the lights back on." Megan chuckled nervously. "That would be nice. I'm getting tired of holding this flashlight." Ryan managed a weak smile, but his mind was racing. Turning the lights on sounded simple enough, but messing with alien technology was risky business. One wrong move could trigger a catastrophic failure or worse. They had no idea what kind of safeguards the original builders might have put in place. For all they knew, the station could be booby-trapped. As if sensing his hesitation, Megan placed a hand on his arm. "Hey, take your time. We're not in a rush. Just be careful, okay?" Ryan nodded, appreciating her concern. He took a deep breath and extended his hand toward the sphere again, this time moving slower, more deliberately. As his fingers brushed against its cool surface, a low hum filled the room, vibrating through the floor beneath their feet. "What did you do?" Megan gasped, taking a step back. "I didn't do anything," Ryan exclaimed, pulling his hand away. But the hum grew louder, echoing off the walls like a distant engine revving to life. The symbols on the walls began to glow brighter, their light pulsing in sync with the sphere. "Oh no," Megan whispered, clutching her camera tightly. "I think you activated something." Before Ryan could respond, the ground beneath them shifted slightly, throwing them both off balance. A panel in the ceiling slid open, revealing a series of mechanical arms tipped with glowing prongs. The arms descended slowly, reaching toward the pedestal and toward Ryan and Megan. "Get back!" Ryan shouted, grabbing Megan's wrist and pulling her away. They stumbled backward, narrowly avoiding the grasp of the mechanical limbs. The arms hovered above the pedestal for a moment before retreating into the ceiling, leaving the room eerily silent once again. "What the hell was that?" Megan demanded, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Ryan admitted, his heart pounding. In his chest, but I think we woke something up. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. They simply stared at the pedestal, waiting for something else to happen. When nothing did, Ryan let out a shaky breath and turned to Megan. "We need to tell Laura and Jake. Whatever this thing is, it's dangerous." Megan nodded, but before they could leave the room, a loud clang echoed through the station, followed by the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, and far too heavy to belong to either Laura or Jake. "Did they come back already?" Megan asked, her eyes wide with fear. "No," Ryan said, shaking his head. That's not them." The footsteps grew louder, drawing closer with each passing second. Ryan instinctively reached for the utility knife strapped to his belt, though he knew it wouldn't do much against whatever was coming. Megan raised her flashlight, aiming the beam down the corridor leading into the control room. A shadow appeared at the edge of the light, tall and distorted. Then another, and another. "What are those?" Megan whispered, her voice barely audible. Ryan squinted, trying to make out the shapes. At first, they looked humanoid, but only vaguely. Their bodies were covered in patches of metal and wires. Their limbs elongated and misshapen. Glowing red eyes stared out from beneath hoods of flesh and circuitry, unblinking and cold. "Hybrids," Ryan muttered, his stomach twisting in horror. "They're part machine, part organic." The creatures stepped into the room, their movements jerky and unnatural. There were 3 of them, each one more grotesque than the last. They didn't speak, didn't communicate in any way. They simply stood there, staring at Ryan and Megan with those soulless red eyes. "Stay behind me," Ryan ordered, positioning himself between Megan and the hybrids. His grip tightened on the utility knife, though he knew it was useless. If these things were hostile, they didn't stand a chance. One of the hybrids tilted its head, as if studying them. Then, without warning, it lunged forward, its claw-like hands reaching for Ryan. He swung the knife wildly, catching the creature's arm and slicing through a bundle of wires. Sparks flew, and the hybrid let out a guttural screech, stumbling. "Backward! Run!" Ryan yelled, grabbing Megan's hand and pulling her toward the exit. The other 2 hybrids gave chase, their metallic limbs clanging against the walls as they moved with terrifying speed. The corridor outside the control room was narrow and poorly lit, making it difficult to see where they were going. The way his mind racing as he tried to remember the layout of the station. They needed to find Laura and Jacand fast. Behind them, hybrids were gaining ground, their mechanical parts whirry and clicking with every step. Ryan glanced over his shoulder, his heart sinking when he saw how close they were. He pushed Megan ahead of him, urging her to run faster. "We're not going to make it," Megan cried, her voice cracking with panic. "Yes, we are," Ryan snapped, refusing to give up. "Just keep moving." They rounded a corner and skidded to a halt. Dead end. The corridor ended in a solid wall, with no doors or openings in sight. Ryan cursed under his breath, spinning around to face the approaching hybrids. "Any ideas?" Megan asked, her voice trembling. Ryan hesitated, his mind racing. Then he spotted a panel on the wall, similar to the ones they had seen earlier. Without thinking, he slammed his fist against it, hoping it would trigger anything that could help them. To his relief, the wall slid open, revealing a hidden passageway. "In here," he shouted, shoving Megan through the opening before following her inside. The wall closed behind them just as the hybrids reached it, their angry screeches muffled by the thick metal. For a moment, they simply stood there, panting and trying to catch their breath. The passageway was dark and cramped, barely wide enough for the 2 of them to stand side by side. But at least they were safe for now. "What are those things?" Megan asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Ryan admitted, leaning against the wall. "But I think they're what killed whoever built this place." Megan shuddered at the thought. "Do you think they're still alive? The builders, I mean." Ryan shook his head. "If they are, they're long gone. This station has been abandoned for centuries. Those hybrids, they're all that's left." The realization hit them both like a punch to the gut. They weren't explorers anymore, they were survivors. And the station, once a beacon of hope and discovery, had become a death tea. Document Part 1. The stars stretched endlessly across the blackness of space, silent reminder of how vast and unyielding the universe could be. Ryan Carter leaned against the cool metal railing of the observation deck aboard the Asterisk Aurora. Dawn Asterisk, his eyes fixed on the endless expanse outside. He had always been fascinated by the idea of exploring the unknown, but this mission was different. It wasn't just about mapping new star systems or cataloging. Distant planets, it was about finding something that could change everything for humanity. Ryan wasn't a soldier or a scientist in the traditional sense. He was an engineer, someone who understood machines better than people. His hands were calloused from years of tinkering with engines, circuit boards, and anything else he could take apart and put back together again. And now, as part of the crew of the Aurora Dawn, he found himself at the edge of human knowledge, searching for answers to questions no one even knew how to ask. Behind him, the faint hum of conversation drifted through the air. Captain Laura Bennett stood near the main console, her sharp gaze scanning the screens before her. She was a woman of few words, but immense presence, the kind of leader who inspired both respect and a little bit of fear. Beside her, Megan Dawson. The ship's biologist adjusted the settings on her scanner, her brow furrowed in concentration. Jake Monroe, the security officer, leaned casually against the wall, his arms crossed over his chest. He looked relaxed, but Ryan knew better. Jake never truly relaxed, not when there was danger lurking around every corner. "Anything yet?" Laura asked, her voice cutting through the quiet like a blade. Megan shook her head. "Nothing unusual. So far, just empty space." Ryan sighed softly, turning his attention back to the view outside. They had been traveling for weeks, venturing deeper into uncharted territory than any human vessel had gone before. The mission had started with high hopes, but as the days dragged on without discovery, morale began to wane. Even Ryan, who usually thrived on challenges, felt the weight of disappointment pressing down on him. But then, it happened. A sudden blip appeared on the radar screen, catching everyone's attention. Megan straightened up, her fingers flying across the controls as she tried to make sense of the data. "There's something out there," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "It's massive." Laura moved closer, her eyes narrowing as she studied the readings. "Can you get a visual?" Jake pushed off the wall and joined them, his hand resting instinctively on the weapon strapped to his side. Ryan stepped forward, too, his heart pounding with anticipation. Whatever was out there, it was big. It was close. The ship's cameras swung into position, focusing on a distant object floating silently in the void. At first, it was hard to make out any details. All they could see was a dark shape, its surface reflecting dim light from a nearby star. But as the Aurora Dawn drew nearer, the object came into clearer focus. It was a station, an alien station. Ryan's breath caught in his throat as he took in the sight. The structure was enormous, easily dwarfing their own ship. Its design was unlike anything he had ever seen. Smooth curves blended seamlessly with sharp angles, creating a look that was both beautiful and unsettling. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly in shades of blue and green. It looked ancient, weathered by time and cosmic forces, yet somehow still intact. "What do you think?" Laura asked, glancing at her crew. "It's incredible," Megan whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. "I've never seen anything like it." Jake frowned, his grip tightening on his weapon. "Looks abandoned. But we should be careful. We don't know what's waiting for us inside." Ryan nodded. In agreement, though, his mind was already racing with possibilities. If this station belonged to an advanced alien civilization, it could hold untold treasures, technology beyond human comprehension. Resources that could revolutionize life back on Earth. But more than that, it represented a chance to learn about another species, to understand their history, and perhaps even their fate. "We need to investigate," Ryan said firmly, meeting Laura's gaze. "This could be the most important discovery we've ever made." Laura hesitated, weighing the risks against the potential rewards. Finally, she gave a curt nod. "All right, but we go in prepared." Jake, you're coming with me. Ryan, Meganor. With us too. Everyone stays alert. We don't know what we're dealing with here. The team quickly gathered their equipment, strapping on oxygen tanks and arming themselves with tools and weapons. As they boarded the shuttle that would take them to the station, Ryan couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and unease. This was what he had dreamed of, a chance to step into the unknown and uncover its secrets. But deep down, he also knew that not all discoveries were meant to be found. The journey to the station was short but tense. As the shuttle docked with the alien structure, the crew exchanged nervous glances. None of them spoke. The gravity of the moment hung heavy in the air. When the hatch opened, revealing a dark corridor stretching into the heart of the station, Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. Laura led the way, her flashlight cutting through the gloom. The walls were smooth and metallic, etched with intricate patterns that seemed to pulse faintly under the beam of light. The air smelled stale, like it hadn't moved in centuries. Every step echoed loudly, the sound reverberating through the empty halls. "This place gives me the creeps," Jake muttered, his weapon raised and ready. "Stay focused," Laura replied sharply. "We're here to gather information, not panic." Ryan trailed behind, his eyes darting around as he tried to take in every detail. He noticed small openings in the walls, possibly vents or conduits, and strange markings that might have been some form of writing. His mind raced with theories, each one more thrilling than the last. Could this station have been a research facility, a military outpost, or something entirely different? Megan paused suddenly, crouching down to examine something on the floor. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a pile of dust-like material. "It's organic, but not human." Ryan knelt beside her, studying the substance closely. Could it be remains from whoever built this place? "Maybe," Megan replied thoughtfully. "But if so, they've been gone for a long time." As they continued deeper into the station, the atmosphere grew heavier, almost oppressive. The corridors twisted and turned unpredictably, leading them through rooms filled with strange machinery and artifacts. Some of the devices still emitted a faint glow, suggesting they were powered by some form of residual energy. Others lay dormant, their purpose unclear. In one particularly large chamber, the team discovered what appeared to be a control room. Panels lined the walls, covered in buttons and switches marked with those same glowing symbols. In the center of the room stood a pedestal-like structure, topped with a crystalline sphere that pulsed rhythmically. "This must be important," Ryan said, approaching the pedestal cautiously. "If we can figure out how to activate it, we might be able to access the station's systems. Or trigger a self-destruct sequence," Jake quipped dryly. Ryan shot him a glare, but didn't argue. He knew Jake had a point. They were operating blind, with no real understanding of the technology surrounding them. Still, he couldn't resist the urge to try. Carefully, he extended a hand toward the sphere, his fingers hovering just above its surface. Before he could touch it, however, Megan grabbed his arm. "Wait," she said urgently. "We don't know what that thing does. Let's not rush into anything." Ryan hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. She was right, of course. They needed to proceed carefully, methodically. This wasn't just about satisfying curiosity, it was about survival. As the team regrouped, discussing their next move, none of them noticed the faint tremor running through the station. Somewhere deep within its core, ancient mechanisms stirred, awakened by their presence. The station, long silent and forgotten, was beginning to come alive again, and it wasn't happy to see them. End document. Part 1.